All right, so this piece is, of course, a classical piece. We have a lot going on here. So first of all, that's an awful lot of eighth notes. So again, we're going to look at this in chunks. Like all of our pieces, we're going to do this in chunks. So if you take a look at the first line and the second line, you can see that there's a lot of similarity between it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this line by line, but we're going to focus particularly on the left hand to help us figure out where the chunks are. So if you notice the first line and the second line, the left hand is moving very similarly. And then all of a sudden it changes into eighths. So that section with the eighths, that's where things are picking up their pace a little bit. And so we want to take some time to really focus on the rhythm and the movement of the left hand at that point. So let's take a look at chunk 1. Okay, chunk 1 is basically bars 1 to 7 and a single note in bar 8 in the right hand. Okay, there is one really important concept when we are doing a piece like the Arietta in C major that we need to make sure we play musically. And that is the slurred eighth notes. Specifically, when two notes are slurred together, we try and emphasize the first note of the pair. So when we're playing this, can you hear that emphasis in the first of each pair? Ba-dum, 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 okay? So that's the idea. You want to make sure that we get a really nice strong emphasis on the first note of each of those pairs. This is one of those pieces where you really want to learn the hands separately and then bring them together for each chunk. So we're going to start with the right hand, and we're actually going to play through the first 8 bars. And you're going to take it nice and slow. You're starting in treble C5, and you are staying there, okay? So it's going to look like this. There's our first phrase, our next phrase. Now our next 2 bars, very similar to the first 2. And then we have a bit of a different ending. So the right hand's doing all the heavy lifting with the melody there. And the key is to watch for your skips and your steps in your treble C5. So the melody itself is equivalent to a level 1 piece, but the technical challenge is that slurring and that phrasing. This piece wants to breathe between each phrase. You can hear those mini pauses. Okay, it's not a staccato, but those slurs are detached between each one. Okay, now our left hand is just walking around down here. So really this is about knowing your bass clef notes and practicing what you see, just learning your notes. And then we're going into the next section, starting on that B. Okay, so you can see this is really the main idea. We're going 2, 4, 1, 4. So B, G, C, G, B, G, C, B, G, C, G, B. Okay, as we get into the next section, similar idea. We're watching the movement of that top note. That G keeps coming back. That is what we would refer to as a pedal tone. Okay, that fifth in the key of C, or that dominant note, is basically sitting underneath the first 3 lines, okay? When we put this together, one of the things that you can do is you can draw lines connecting the sections between the right hand and the left hand that play together. And then again, just take it really slowly, a bar at a time. Make sure you've mastered a bar or two before you move on. Don't try and connect the two hands for the entire piece all in one go. So really, you're just going to start with the timing of the left hand coming in. Your right hand's going to start this time, and then your left is going to come in. Do that a couple times. Get used to the left hand coming in. Okay, now your two hands play together on every beat. Okay, so that's beat 1 and beat 2 of each bar. So we don't have any syncopated rhythms here. We don't have anything to trip us up in terms of the coordination of the two hands. So bar 2, beat 1, beat 2, beat 1, beat 2. Now we put those two bars together. And we continue in the same manner. Okay, so that first beat at the start of bar 8, that's where that chunk stops. Now we move on to the second chunk. We do not worry about speeding up the piece at this point. You play it as slowly as you need to connect those hands and give your brain a chance to figure out what is playing where. But now the next section, now the left hand is doing quite a bit of heavy lifting. So at first, I actually want you to try this. Remember that G is always going to be there. This is your fourth finger, so it's going to be weak. It's going to be tough to play this a little bit, and you want to strengthen that fourth finger. But watch what happens to my top fingers. We're here. Now that pattern doesn't seem too complicated, right? The top of your left hand is going to play the B, the C, the D, the C, and the B. So again, that looks like this. Now, if that's all we were looking at in the left hand for that next chunk, that would feel pretty simple. But actually, we're going to go back and forth between the notes. So here's our B and G. Now we move up to the C. Now up to the D. Back to the C. Back to the B. That's that whole section, okay? That takes practice, okay? Fast finger work like that is something you want to start slowly and slowly work your speed up to where it needs to be. Okay, if I were playing this full speed, and this is probably faster than the piece needs, it might look like this. So you notice we've got that pedal tone going on here. We want to emphasize what's happening in the top. That's where the movement is. And we want to make sure we have evenness to our rhythm. So it takes some time. Again, it takes practice. Your right hand isn't doing too much at first. In some ways, the left hand and the right hand have switched in terms of who's doing more work and who's sort of carrying the momentum and the movement of the piece. Okay, so while your left hand is busy, your right hand is continuing this with this fairly simple melody. Okay, so we've just ended here. But then we get into our eighth notes. So first of all, make sure for those first 3 bars, bar 8, 9, and 10, do not forget that rest. It should sound very broken and sort of detached, okay? Because that then shows everybody how smooth and fast moving this part is. Okay, this slow broken section calls everyone's attention to this. Now, playing that hand separately, not too bad. You're learning to do the fast finger work in the left hand. Once you've got the left hand, and I mean, you really have the left hand. It's really strongly coordinated. You've got a nice steady rhythm. Your left hand isn't hiccuping or rolling or anything like that. Then you can try putting them together. So with each note change at the top of the left hand, that right hand's going to play along. Now take some time here. Every note, there's a change in the right and the left hand together. There's nothing for it except to slow it right down and take it a note at a time, connecting the hands on each note, and then slowly speeding it up. So it's really about knowing what the right hand is doing and when the left hand top note needs to change. Okay? So that's section 2. Once you've got it, you can play that together. So because bar 8 is a place that moves from chunk 1 to chunk 2, we want to make sure that we have a seamless transition. So I like to start in bar 7. That's chunk 2. Now, chunk 3 is a little bit tricky. We've got some accidentals in here. So we were hoping to see maybe a return to what was happening in the first 2 lines, but that's not actually happening here. Clementi likes to do something a little bit different. So let's take a look again at the right hand where the melody is. And we're just going to see that at first, Clementi's going, ho, 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 we're returning to theme A. And then he goes, oh, no, we're not. There's our D sharp. He's actually finishing the piece, but he's going, I'm going to give you a little bit of a false ending, and I'm going to extend this piece before you hear the final resolution in the end. So these last 2 lines are really just kind of milking the ending of this piece, right? He could go like this. But that's kind of boring. So he's going to bring in some excitement and some interest, and that makes things exciting and interesting for us as musicians. Because now we're looking at accidentals, we're looking at changes in notes. But you'll notice the coordination between the left and the right hand is similar to what we had in the first chunk. We already have dealt with this in the first chunk. We know how to practice and how to get our piece to where we need it for this. So, taking a look, you've got your right hand. Okay, now those first 2 bars in this chunk, so bars 13 and 14, repeat again in the right hand for bars 17 and 18. But now we're playing forte. Our echo is actually going to be louder this time. So initially we started piano, but now we're going to echo forte to say the end is coming. The end of the piece is coming. And then we're going to end this. So there's our 16th notes. We've basically got the equivalent of a written out trill. So as you get used to this feeling, you're going to slowly speed it up. And make sure that rhythm is nice and steady. Our left hand, we know how to read steps. We know how to read skips. We've got a leap coming up. That's an octave leap. It's a very common way to end classical pieces. The trick here is we have a B flat. So here we are. We have gone from C major to, oh, interesting. When we have a B flat, what is this hand position? Well, that's our F5 with the B flat in there. Now we breathe on what would have been the repeated C. We've got a rest there instead. Hand compression to the 1, octave jump to the lower G, and a second finger on the C to end. Okay, bars 13 to 20 look like this. Shh. Okay, again, that's the kind of thing that takes practice. But if it sounds a little strange after playing this originally, okay, and now we're playing this. That's because, again, we've modulated a little bit. We've changed our key, especially in the left hand. Okay, put that together with a different key in the right hand. Very, very different and strange for Clementi to be doing this. And then again, when we go to connect the hands, take it nice and slow. And again, once you've learned your notes and you've coordinated the hands, we can start talking about things like phrasing, making sure that you leave little breaths or gaps between each slur. And in fact, I would challenge you to go back through this video and see if there are any breaths between slurs that I missed. It'll help you get to know where those breaks need to be, and it'll get you practiced at hearing what the piece sounds like when it's detached versus when it's not detached. If I played that ooey gooey like an all legato, it would sound like this. But we want it to be a little more dancey, a little more skippy. We want it to breathe and have that space. So imagine the difference between someone just sort of sliding and slipping their feet along a floor versus skipping along because you want something happy and excited and energetic and moving. Okay, so that is the Arietta. This one takes some time, and you want to be nice and slow in trying to connect those hands. Give yourself time to figure out when the hands need to play together. And remember, if you're doing this slowly, you can help yourself out by reading your note names out loud for each of your hands, making sure that your separate hands know what they're doing before you really try and connect them. And you can even say the notes out loud, because sometimes when you're playing, they may not sound the best together, but when you put them in the larger piece, it sounds great and it sounds amazing. Okay, so take your time, be gentle with yourself, be resilient, and give yourself lots of time to practice putting these things together. And I'm sure that it'll sound lovely. Good luck.